Yeah, so this is something that we do every evening. So it takes about 45 minutes or an hour, depending on how much time that we have. And it's supposed to be like CPR for Bob's energy. So it's supposed to be like, or like when you're doing CPR, you're trying to push the blood through the system. And with ALS, the Chinese theory of it is that there's major energy blockages which are happening. And so this acupressure that I'm doing today, they'll do acupuncture at his appointment tomorrow. Bob doesn't like me doing any needles.
No.
So, but we do this every night, and it's on his back and his arms and his legs. And we do this.
Okay.
So, and we've pretty much done it almost every day for the
night
last
for
5 years.
5 years,
So
yeah.
it's a pretty big investment. It means you can't really travel apart from your
Right.
partner, because
You're stuck.
a few times Bob's had his parents do it, or
The girls
one of the
have done it
girls,
too
but it's a
sometimes.
pretty rare
Yeah.
Yeah.
circumstance, just because there's nobody that does it like me,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this is a special, I don't know, hammer that
Mhm.
came from China, and I use this part for the first part that I do, which is just like putting pressure right along his spinal column. So, and again, we don't really understand all the mechanisms why, but we've been told to do it this way, so we do it this way. But it feels kind of good, doesn't
Yeah.
it, for the
yeah.
most part?
Oh, it's a great way to end the day. Everybody should have.
Yeah, sometimes the girls come down and they're like, when is my turn?
Yeah.
Until I do you'll see there's some parts that aren't quite as comfortable when I use the
Do you
hammer
have
a
any
little bit.
pain, Bob?
Not too much. Yeah, not too much. So just some side effects like muscle weakness, like in my neck. Sometimes you'll see me kind of stretching my head. But generally, not much pain. So that's one good thing about the disease.
You,
Is that
you do have some like sensitivity.
yeah,
to
some odd
clothes and
things around my
some-
arms and hands. Some sensitivity that is uncomfortable, but not like intense pain.
So I'm just doing a little bit different pressure points. Like with Chinese medicine, they talk about there being meridian points that line up in your body, kind of the way energy flows. And so I'm working at various of those points that he showed us how to do. So work up good hand muscles doing this. So I don't know, what other kind of things would be helpful? So Bob does this every day, and then about once a week he does acupuncture and cupping, which you'll see tomorrow. He drinks 2 to 3 cups of that tea that you'll see tomorrow. He takes a whole bunch of supplements. That's not part of Chinese medicine, but they're things that other people have suggested that we try. So things like vitamin D and CoQ12, CoQ10.
CoQ10. Maybe mention to them how that list came about.
Oh, yeah, that's a good story. So when Bob got diagnosed with ALS, one of the things that they basically tell you is that there's no treatment and there's no cure for this. And it's something where the average person lives between 3 and 5 years with the disease. And so when they tell you that, you feel pretty helpless because you think there's not really anything that you can do. And so, of course, the first thing that we did was got online and tried to find out as much as we could and asked as many people who know somebody who's had this disease what they recommend doing, because the doctors over at the U of M just said there's nothing, no research has shown anything to be effective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't things that aren't effective. It's just that there hasn't been the research to document that there's been a significant effect. And so something like vitamin D, because nobody's ever going to make money off vitamin D as a helpful treatment for this, nobody would ever do the research to figure it out. So Bob asked about 5 friends who have backgrounds in some kind of healthcare or
Even not
pharmacology.
healthcare. One has a PhD in history,
So,
and so
we
just
just-
smart people who offered to help.
so we just asked them to if to basically go and do whatever background work that they could to make a recommendation if it were them with this disease, what supplements would they recommend taking. So, and basically what it came down to is a set of kind of antioxidant kind of things and some other things that are good for like neural pathways and things like that. And so they basically suggested about 6 or 7 different supplements. Again, we have no idea
Yeah.
if any of them are working, but it was really great because we felt so overwhelmed
Hmm.
after Bob getting the diagnosis that it was great that all of these people kind of came together and
Yeah.
said, here's what we recommend.
Yeah, they
that you do.
did it within a few days, and it included not only supplements but acupuncture. There was a drug at that time that was showing some early promise, lithium, and a few other prescription-based medications, and they wrote up a one-page assessment of each of the options.
With any potential side effects or what the cost would be of using it on an annual basis. Because again, you don't want to take something that's going to be so expensive
Or have negative side effects.
or have bad side effects. I will say there is one drug that they found that extends the lifespan about 2 months,
3, yeah.
3 months. It's called Real-Utech, and it costs $1,000 a month. Now, our insurance covers most of it, but if you didn't have insurance, that would be a pretty hard equation to say, the average person gets 3 more months of life, but you have to take it for, an indefinite amount of time. How much, $12,000 a year, that would be a hard decision to make if you didn't have very many resources. So Bob takes a bunch of different supplements, some in the morning and some at night. And again, we don't know if any of them are working, but he's doing so well. 5 years into his diagnosis, we're like, well, we'll just keep doing everything we're doing, and at least it makes us feel like there's something
Right.
that we can do.
Right.
So I'm just working these different elbow, wrist areas right now, and I'm going to work on Bob's hands. So for Bob, his disease started in his right hand. We were in Australia for 6 months on sabbatical, and he realized he couldn't hold a tennis racket anymore. He couldn't grip it very
I
hard.
could grip it and play, but
He wasn't
I
able to
had
get
no
the
power
power.
on it, yeah.
And then he also noticed around that time that he was getting these vesiculations that kind of look like electrical impulses going underneath his skin. And you can imagine probably in the olden days, people probably thought people that had this disease were possessed or something, or that there were something inside his
Yeah.
body that was doing these vesiculations. But what they are is actually the brain's trying to send signals to different parts of the body, and it's being blocked. And so kind of then bounces back and makes it look like something's happening. But you can imagine if those circuits are going and going and going and going, eventually they burn out, and then you don't have the use of your hands. That's probably a very non-technical description, but kind of gives you an idea of what it is. So that's where it started, and then it moved to his left hand, maybe a year or 2 later. And so now pretty much can't use either hand. Little things, no fine motor
Yeah.
skills,
fine
but
motors. Pretty bad.
but enough things that he can still lift up a toothbrush or drive a car with a brace that he has on his hand, and you'll probably see that tomorrow. So, but a lot of changes, things that you take for granted being able to do that you can't do anymore. So we just try to always figure out what the next way is to do something when something can't get done.
Does it always start in the hand, or does it start in other places for other
That's
people?
a good question. For some people, it starts in the legs. It either starts in either of the two legs, either of the two hands, or sometimes it starts with the voice or breathing. And that's the place you definitely don't want it to start, because as soon as it affects your breathing, then if your breathing becomes too hard to do, you can't breathe
Yeah.
anymore. So at least when it's the other parts of the body, you can deal without using your hands or legs. But it can start in any one of the limbs or in the, it's called bulbar, B-U-L-B-A-R region. So luckily that hasn't been so much of an issue for Bob. But he does use something called a BiPAP machine at night, because when you're sleeping, your like diaphragm relaxes and you don't breathe as well. And so it kind of forces, it's not a ventilator, but it forces oxygen into your system. And if he doesn't use it every night, but if he doesn't use it for a couple nights, he might start having a little bit of headache and drowsiness because he's not getting enough oxygen in his system. So you started doing that maybe 9 months
Something
ago?
like that, yeah.
Something like that. So, which is, hasn't been too bad. Means he
Yeah.
doesn't snore. It's a good thing. But it's kind of a pain to take around when you travel and stuff. It's not real big, but it's still one more thing to do. So, anyway, I think that's about the end of that hand. So now we'll do the other arm, and then we'll move over to the massage table after that. So I feel like I'm rambling.
Yeah. You can edit it right.